Welcome.
How is everybody today? You feeling good? Excellent, excellent, excellent. What does the term personality mean? Personality. What does that mean? Again, raise your hand if you don't have one. You, sir, Mr. Agarwal, do you have a personality? No, you have one. It's not a good one, but you have one. I figure I can pick on him since he didn't buy a ticket. He has a gregarious personality. He has an extroverted personality. So what is a personality if we can put adjectives in front of it? Behavior, right. A collection of behavior. What else? The way you respond. Sure. What else? Values. Values might include personality, you bet. Values would force somebody to display certain characteristics, right? Okay? So personality, is right here, is the term for behavior and character. The reason I mentioned I start with personality is handwriting analysis is not about handwriting. It's about personality on paper. So if somebody says, why are you studying handwriting? You say, because I'm interested in people's what? Personality. That's it. So all we're doing is linking handwriting to personality. Okay? Let me show you something really interesting, which I just showed at one other seminar, but I think it really makes it simple for us. There's a particular, like a letter or a formation, right? I'm going to call it a stroke. So we have a letter stroke, right? Like a T or a D, right? It's a stroke. And so there could be 10 strokes. You could have 100 strokes. I mean, I think in the back of our certification course, we have like 84 character traits. And it says this stroke equals this character trait, right? So the stroke equals a particular behavior, or what we call a trait. Equals a particular trait. So, for example, this is a little loop in the D. A loop in the D equals sensitive to criticism. By the way, we'll get to this, so you don't have to write this down. Sensitive, right? Loop in the D equals sensitive. You could probably pick that information from any secondhand bookstore on handwriting analysis. Okay? You know, not all of them are correct, I'll warn you. There's some that are bad, but this trait correlation is very simple. There's something else here. The trait equals the behavior. And what we really want to know is how are we going to behave in a situation? Isn't that correct? Okay? So the trait equals the behavior. And then, if you want to go one equals farther, equals the description. Or metaphor. Let me think of what a metaphor. Give me an example of a metaphor, especially for your culture. Repeat that. Brave like a lion. Excellent. Thank you. Brave like a lion. So, by the way, there's not a stroke for bravery. Okay? Doesn't mean you couldn't see it in handwriting, but it would be a combination of things. Okay? So let's assume that, let's assume that we had one. So this is bravery. Okay? It's something like that. Remember, this is not true. I just made that up. All right? So this ink spot means bravery, and the behavior is this person tends to take risk in order to achieve his innate values. He's willing to sacrifice himself in the name of justice. Is that a good behavior? The metaphor is he's brave like a lion. Now, if I look at your handwriting and I say, wow, you're brave like a lion, that's excellent, isn't it? You know exactly what I mean. But what I've done, I've skipped 2 steps. because I used a great metaphor. If I say, for example, like low self-esteem, T-bar is low, a very common metaphor for low self-esteem is low self-esteem. So let's do this here. I'm getting real advanced on you, but I know you're smart. You can follow, okay? Low self-esteem, low, equals, so I described the behavior. People with low self-esteem, they don't necessarily appreciate who they are. Perhaps this person judges himself too harshly and doesn't believe that he can achieve stuff. So he thinks of himself less. So I could go on behavior, right? But one metaphor that I find works most of the time is you stay in bad jobs or relationships too long. That's a good metaphor, right? Does anybody you know have a low self-esteem? Raise your hand if you know someone with a low self-esteem. Raise your hand. Would that person agree with this statement? You stay in a bad job or relationship too long. Yes or no? Yes? Great. Now here's the point. I've used that metaphor and the person says, nope, I used to stay in a bad relationship, but now I have a good relationship. So I look like I was wrong, right? I look like or the handwriting was wrong. Because I said, you stay in bad relationships too long. And he usually say, no, I said bad relationships. You're in a good one now. Oh, yeah, I'm in a good one now. Okay? The point is, if you can get really great at telling metaphors, people will think you're a genius. Okay? If you ever meet a handwriting analyst that is not very good, what's probably happening is they're seeing the stroke, if they've been taught correctly. They understand the trait, but they just don't understand the behavior, and they're terrible at creating metaphors. So they're amateurs. So that's one of the things, the useful things about listening to me and our tapes and our CDs is I'm really good at all four of these things, so I can describe a behavior really well. And if you learn the metaphors that I tell you, you will be able to describe behavior really, really well. So that's the simple of handwriting. And so most of today we're going to say, here's what a stroke means. Here's the exceptions, but here's what it means. Here's the trait. Here's the behavior. And here's the description of the metaphor that I usually use. Is that helpful? It really is. That's all we're doing. We're describing behavior, and we're using metaphors to describe it. And the better you get at that, the better people will understand what you're talking about.